This worked at the same time this.
What? Pause that. Are we ready? Get away from it. No. No! Echo!
Json. Switch yourself to this guy.
You don't want this on it while he's talking?
Oh.
Everything is good. No, the storm's gone.
Yeah.
That was awful.
Yeah.
And then I came back before the storm hit.
Yeah.
Where'd you go? Yes.
I like to do that.
Guys.
What do I do with my hands?
No. I came back
Just
on the morning
don't-
before the storm hit on purpose. 2 minutes.
You have a third finger on?
No, I knew it wasn't going to hit us.
Yeah, I heard a click. There's no mirror on that.
Yeah, right.
It was totally fine. So guys, thank you. First of all, welcome to BocaJS. I'm Damien. This is Michael. We're the two organizers. We want to thank you guys for coming. I don't know how many of you guys actually showed up during the hurricane when we kind of canceled it almost. I think almost 24 hours before it happened. But if anybody showed up, hopefully you had a drink and enjoyed yourself. Because I was gone. So thank you for coming back after being gone for long. We've got a great presenter here, and I hope that's why there's so many of you guys here. And if I haven't taken care of, I see a few of you guys that I haven't given drink tickets to. I'm Drink Man. I'll explain why I have money for drinks. I'm not generous. You'll see why in a minute. And but thank you guys for everything. So before we talk about presenters, I'm going to talk about our sponsor. One of our longest sponsors is Sendine Spaces, so the co-working space you see over there. And Amanda, you've seen Amanda walk around. She's the one who takes care of it. And if you want any more information about it, just drop a piece of paper with your name, email, or your business card in the back bowl, and she'll tell you all about it. And hurry. We used to work there, me and a team of about 10 people, and then the moment we left 3 offices we owned back there, we were like, wow, they will never fill it up. They filled it up within 3 days. They are non-stop. There are machines in there. But the reason why is so that it's cheap, it's great internet, all this access, all this presentations if you need presentations, and take a look at it. They're the longest running sponsors from them. The second longest running sponsor is Italians. We have Jason here, which will tell you all about him.
Hey guys, good to see everybody. I see some new faces. If you guys don't know me, my name is Jason Walkout. I'm one of the founders of a company called Taliance. We're the ones in the middle. We're an IT staffing and consulting firm. I'm also a JavaScript developer, mostly React and Node. So if you guys are looking for a new job or you're looking to hire people, come find me after. We'll exchange information and we can talk more about it. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for coming. And as always, I'm looking forward to hearing Jeremy. So,
No pressure.
no pressure.
I'll be quick, promise. Okay. So, hey guys, want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. We've had a couple of rough months, so thanks everybody for kind of bearing with that. We're going to kick this up into gear again, and it will be happening every month like we've been doing. So, just wanted everybody to know that, and again, thanks for the support. Without further ado, let's hand it over to Jeremy, and we'll go from here.
So to present, how many of you guys do not? I mean, how many of you know this gentleman right here standing next to me? Thank you, I appreciate it. So if you don't, you should. This is one of the best speakers we've had around. It's one of the people that runs the Palm Beach Tech JavaScript group up north. And has been kind enough to say that I also help him. Yes, he does it all. He runs the code camp. He works for the Palm Beach Code Camp, so one of the teachers there. And he is the head of, he took over my position. I used to be the top guy at Arrow when it comes to front end. Now it's this guy. So Arrow Design has hired this guy as the lead front end developer, more like lead front end manager, defining everything. So we're going to hear from Jeremy. And he's presenting JavaScript back to the basics. Jeremy, take it away.
Hello, testing, 1, 2. All right, I don't know how to use this thing, so if I'm talking too loud or does it sound muffled? Everyone hear me okay? Cool. I'm off to the side. What are you doing to me, Damien? So today we're going to be talking about 5 concepts I like to 5 concepts that help you understand JavaScript better. I've been on a kick lately where I want to get back to the fundamentals. Everybody's quick to jump on these React frameworks, this Angular, this Ember, or they're very heavy into jQuery. So when I talk about some of these concepts to some of the newer developers, they have no idea what I'm talking about, or they've been copying and pasting and they don't understand why it works. So my whole talks have been about just understanding what you've seen from Stack Overflow and kind of giving some basic understanding of that. So today we're going to talk about variables with var, let, and const. We're going to talk about some scope, functions, and callbacks. This one trips a lot of people up. How to avoid polluting the DOM, coercion, and Json. These are things everybody touches on a daily basis but may not understand why they're dealing with it. So a little bit about me. As Damien mentioned, I am a manager of platforms on the platforms team at Arrow Digital. I moonlight at Palm Beach Code School as the JavaScript instructor, and I run several meetups. So getting right into it. Damien, what are you doing to me, bro? Variables. All right, so everyone knows about the var keyword, right? This is the variable. In order to declare a variable, you need to use the var keyword and provide a name. Hopefully that name makes sense to what you're holding, but it doesn't necessarily need to. So, for example, we have var username and Jernbo. Then we have var best meetup ever is Palm Beach JavaScript. You see what I did there? That one's for Damien. So everyone's clear on that. We've used this 1,000 times. Now let's move on to what ES6 is introduced to us. A lot of the things I'm going to talk about today are available in modern browsers, so you don't have to do any kind of backlog to ES5 or anything like that. You can use this in the last 2 versions, of the browser, last 2 years. So let introduce us ES6. This gave us another way to define variables that could be reassigned and are block scoped. Any idea what I mean by block scope? Good, we have a section on that coming up. So to see what we have here, we have let username. It's the same thing as variable. And then let best user. Let needs to be unique names, right? You cannot redeclare a variable using the let keyword. It will produce an error and crash your app. That's the new thing coming to ES6 with the let keyword. So what does that look like? If I have var username as Jernbo, and then I'm trying to use that variable somewhere else with let username, it's going to crash my app. And the beauty of this is you get to see that right away, so you know exactly where to go to fix your error. With the var keyword, it'll just silently overwrite for you, and you don't necessarily know why or where that's happening, and debugging becomes a pain. So let really helps us out there. Const. Const is also a new way to define variables. It cannot be reassigned, and our block scope like let. So again, looking at const username equals Jernbo and const best meetup ever. No real changes here between the way we're using our 3 variables. We have var, let, and const. Const is mutable. Const is a very weird concept because in other languages, const means you can't mutate it. So when I say mutable, it means I can change something about this variable, the data that's in this variable. The only caveat to this is I can't redeclare it. Just like let, if I try to do const username in 2 different spots, I'll get an error. So here's some examples where I'm trying to redeclare username as to Damien. I get an error because I'm assigning it up there on line 1. And on line 2, I have var meetups, and I've changed it to an array, but it's just an array of strings. Later on, I might need an array of objects, so I'm trying to redeclare that here on line 4, right, where it's just an array of objects of title of Palm Beach JavaScript. Those 2 are going to produce me errors because I'm reassigning, I'm changing it from the original value explicitly. But const can be mutated. right? If I have an object or if I have an array inside of that const variable, I can push or pop to that array. That's one of the misconceptions about const is it's not mutatable. In other languages, you can't change it. The whole point of a constant is to be consistent throughout your whole app. JavaScript is almost there, where I can't redeclare it and I can't reassign it. So we're halfway there. That being said, since const can't be redeclared or be reassigned, when I first declare it, it needs to be initialized. It needs to hold a value when I first have it. So if I try to do this, const meetups, I'm going to get a syntax error. A lot of people have been saying don't use var ever. There's no reason. Now that we have let and const in our languages, we never need to use var again. I say there's some valid points to that, but there are some use cases, which I'm going to get into a little later, of where var is used to my advantage. So I'm going to get into those points. My point of saying this is use var, understand what it's doing, and use it to your advantage. Use it where necessary. Don't blindly change everything to let or const if you don't need to. Use where appropriate. So scope. Scope determines the accessibility or visibility of variables or functions. Right? What do I have access to right now is what scope means. Variables defined within a function are what we call a local scope. That means I can use that variable inside of those curly brackets in my function declaration, and I cannot use it anywhere else. If I try to call it outside of that function, I will get errors. Variables defined outside the function scope are what we call global, meaning anywhere in my script I can have access to them. Does that concept make sense? What local and global means? Line 1, right? That's a global variable. I can use this anywhere. I'm defining a new scope by using the function keyword, and when I say a block of scope, I'm talking about the curly brackets right after my parentheses. So inside of my block of code, I have const date. Now, right below that, I'm console logging hello username, welcome to the year, whatever year date is, right? That works fine. That prints out exactly what you expect it to do. It says, hello, Jernbo, welcome to year 2017. But then when I try to use date on the last line here, I'm going to find error. It has no concept of what that means. This is what we're used to in ES5, and this persists through ES6 and beyond, right? So the idea of global scope versus local scope still exists. Block scope is the new one to the ES6 world. When using a var keyword inside of a block, like an if statement or a switch statement or loops, there is no new scope created. Instead, everything is hoisted up to the local function scope that it's in. All right? This is not the case when we're using let or const. Let or const are defined within the block, and again, I'm defining block by the open and close curly brackets of a function. The same thing could be said about my if statement, or my switch statement, or my while loop, or anything like that. Open and close curly curly brackets are my block. So looking at this example here, we have a simple for loop, right, where we've already defined our global scope, and we have some internal scope, a local scope with my for var I equals 0. Anybody shout out what I'm getting in between in the for loop? What do you guys expect there? What should I equal at the end of the loop inside there? 9, right? Now, what do I get on the very next line, outside the loop? What does I equal there? Undefined? I heard 10. Doesn't exist? In this case, it does. It equals 10. Right? So what's happening under the hood is this. So I, being that, var I, being that it's not block scoped, it's going up to the function scope and is now local to that function. So anywhere I need to use that inside that function, I is now defined. Now the very, very last line in this program, I is undefined because it's outside that function block. Right? This tripped me up for a long time, and this is what a lot of people were complaining about when they come from other languages into JavaScript, where there's no block level scoping. Let and const solve this problem for us. So in this context, it's the exact same program. We expect 1 through 9 to be printed out inside the for loop, and then outside the for loop, we get an undefined error, as we expected, and the same thing would happen down there. What are you doing, Damien? So that's block scope. That's what's been introduced to the language along with the let and const. Here's another way. So the idea of blanketly using let and const is a bad idea in my opinion. And here's an example of where I would want that to happen. What do you guys expect to happen here? What do you, in my console log? Greeting username, it should be hello, Jumbo. What's the keyword I'm using though? I'm using var. So just like my for loop, it's doing this, right? So remember, a block scope is an if statement, a switch statement, a loop. Anything that is defined within a function is my block scope, right? So if in this example, I'm hoisting up to its local scope, which is user, its function scope. So this will render out hello, Jumbo. Now what's going to happen here? Ah, crap, I already told you. Undefined error, right? Because it's contained within there. So there are times when I'm creating programs where I have simple conditional statements where I don't necessarily want to have to explicitly write my variable outside the block scope to use it. This is where var is used to my advantage. Question? No doubt. So this is a very simplistic example to express that, but yes, you're absolutely right. I could use a ternary operator. I just wanted to illustrate the point of what a block scope is when using let and const, and where it might benefit me by using variables. Any questions so far? So we talked about 3 ways of declaring a variable, and we talked about the 3 types of scoping. Pretty clear now? It's helping out? Very cool. So I want to get into functions and callbacks. So first, it helps to define what a function is. A function block is a block of reusable code. We can break it down into 4 parts. You have the function keyword, you have the function's name, then you have a list of parameters in parentheses, aka arguments, and then you have a return statement. The parameters in the return statement are optional. Right? Not every function needs to return something, and not every function needs to accept arguments, right? There are a couple different flavors. We have a function declaration, we have an expression, and an anonymous function. So this is called a function declaration simply because I'm declaring a function. I have the function keyword, I have a function name, and then I'm doing something with it. In this case, I'm accepting 2 arguments, accepting 2 parameters, and I am returning an optional output of width times height. In the example, since I'm returning something, it's a good idea to save it to a variable. Like if I'm getting some value back from this, save it somewhere so I can use it later. So I'm saving it to wall 1 and wall 2. This is the exact same thing, but a function expression. The reason why this is called a function expression is because it's a function where an expression should be. We have a var keyword, let or const, a variable name, and an equal something. The right-hand side of the equal sign is called the expression, and instead of being any other data type, an array, Boolean, number, string, etc., it's a function. That's what makes this a function expression. And there's no real advantage one way or the other. Some people talk about hoisting as a good way of declaring things with the function or the declaration or the expression, but I see it used widely, drastically different by everybody else. So I say take a style, choose it, and run with it. Here's an example of an anonymous function. Anyone tell me why this is an anonymous function? Like 1 key difference here. Doesn't have a name, that's it, right? So I'm going to get into why these things are useful, anonymous functions, because I can't, if it doesn't have a name, how do I refer to it? How do I call it? I can't really. I mean, I can make an iffy, right? I can invoke it right there. But outside of that, this isn't really useful right now. Before I can talk about why that's useful, I need to understand what a parameter and argument is. So a parameter is a variable in a function definition. So in my calculate array, we had width and height. Those are parameters. When I'm declaring my function, I'm accepting parameters. I'm stating this function needs these two things to run. All right? When I invoke a function, when I call it, when I trigger it, the arguments are what is passed into that data. So back to that same example. We have function, calc area, we have width and height. Those are my parameters because I'm declaring them there. What those values are unknown to me right now. I don't know what they're going to be. But as I move down my program or I utilize this function, I invoke it. On line 4 and 5, I'm invoking it here with calc area. The arguments are what I pass into the data that these parameters represent. Now it's important to note that these are one-to-one. So 5 goes into width, 10 goes into height. Right? 5 goes into width, and then this 5 goes into height. So we have an example here of a button. I'm doing a simple query selector for an ID of button, and I'm adding an event listener to it. Adding an event listener in JavaScript accepts two parameters. What am I listening for, and what do I want to do when that happens? So the very first thing I'm passing in is what do I want to listen for, and I'm listening for the click event. This is where anonymous functions come into play, where the second thing is what do I want to do? I want to run this function. This is what we call a callback. When I want to execute a set of code, when this event happens, I can use an anonymous function passed as a parameter, passed as an argument to a particular function. My function is add event listener. That accepts two parameters. What am I listening for? What do I want to do? This is where you most commonly see a anonymous function. Question? I'm sorry? Absolutely. So JavaScript treats functions as first-class citizens. The fact that I can store a function in a variable, I can absolutely pass that in to this second parameter here. So instead of declaring a new function, I can declare my calc area and pass that into there as well. So again, a callback is a function passed into an argument. All callbacks are functions, but not all functions are callbacks. Right? It's only when a function is passed as an argument is when we call it and refer to it as a callback. So here, let's break it down. Like what's actually happening under the hood, right? So we have a function called greetUser where I have a CB. It's a variable name I decided to call it for callback, and I have username. I'm invoking this callback here, and I'm passing in an argument of hello, whatever the username is, right? So that's what this function is doing. When I invoke greetUser, the two parameters it's accepting or it's requiring is my callback and my username. So I'm going to pass in the alert. And then also I'm going to pass in Jumbo. So what's happening is where I had CB, now we can think of that as alert. And where we had username, we can think of that as Jumbo. And then that's changing this code to alert. And alert just has that annoying box where you got to click X to get out of it. So this says hello, Jumbo. So let's look at another way of doing this. This is all the same way, we're doing the same thing over and over again. I'm just demonstrating different ways that you might run into this in the wild. So again, greetUser, callback, and user. I'm passing in an anonymous function and Jumbo again. So what does that change? CB is now function, username is Jumbo. That switches that out, which invokes the anonymous function, which comes down here and executes. So I should have one more slide where this is passing message into here, which then in turn is console logging my message out. So here was the question: can I pass it as an expression or a variable, just a function declaration? The answer is absolutely. So we have function greet user, all the same, and then we have my function called log stuff. This is the exact same thing we were doing in the last slide. So here, I'm passing in log stuff, which is the direct reference to this. Notice I don't have the parentheses around this log stuff. I don't like to invoke a function is to put the parentheses right next to it. The reason I don't do that is because I don't want to trigger that function right away. I want log stuff to come up here before it's triggered. So again, we're switching out log stuff in Jumbo, which then is passing things down to here, which then in turn is passing things down to there. That's the chain this is going down. It's going to start off in greet user. It's going into log stuff, building my new string, and then moving everything down to log stuff, because log stuff accepts a parameter called message. Any questions about that? Cool. The next topic I wanted to talk about is coercion. This is a very controversial topic in JavaScript. Coercion is a way to change one entity data type of one data type into another. All right? The reason this is a controversial topic is because a lot of people view this as a flaw. Some say it's good, some say it's bad, some say it's understand what it's doing and use it to your advantage. And that's my stance on this. Coercion I use all the time, all day, every day. And it's one of my favorite things about the language until it isn't. Like, it does bite me in the butt sometimes, but it is super powerful. Has anybody run into the first two examples where you try to add two numbers together and it wound up a string? Right? So logically speaking, we should think 10 plus 10 equals 20, right? But the problem with this is, what is plus symbol? It does two things in JavaScript. What are the two things it does? Concatenation and addition, right? So this is where coercion is coming into play. It's saying, since one side's a string, convert the other side to a string and mush things together. That's the point of concatenation. Same thing with 15 plus 5. That's why we get 155 instead of 20. But then not every other math symbol does that. Right? So 5 minus string 2 gives me 3. String 20 minus string 10 gives me 10. All right, so, and that's coercion at its finest. It's helping me out, where the only symbol that's not understood is the plus symbol, because it's addition and concatenation. Right? That's where the weirdness comes into play. I thought the so the Hello World one, that one was pretty interesting to me, but the one underneath it blew my mind. Like, when I was doing the research for this, like to help understand this and explain this, array of 6 minus 4 gave me 2. So I tried to push the limits to this. It only works with an array of 1. Like, if I have an array of 4 items in there, it doesn't, like, I get some weird error. So I thought that was weird. So where do we use coercion the most, right? So we use coercion the most when we're doing a conditional statement. You guys ever notice the difference between double equals and triple equals? What does that mean? Right, so triple equals is looking for data type as well as equality, whereas the double equals is looking for equality, right? It's doing the coercion for you, right? So in these examples here, we'll see that, you know, what's true and what's not based on, you know, coercion helping me out. And the last 3 examples are the strict equality. So double equals, I use all the time. Everybody tells me to use the triple equals without, you know, just like forget about var, use only let and const. And my argument's the same for that. Like, var, I use to my advantage, right? The reason why I would use double equals versus triple equals is getting input fields from a user form, even though it's data type number, it's a string. So if I say, get me user age from the input field and equal it to 21 if I'm making a beer site, it's going to be, if it's triple equal, it's not going to be the same, because the value from the number field is a string. And if I'm equaling it to a number of 21, it's not going to be the same thing. So this is where I use coercion all the time to my advantage. And then every so often I'll use, you know, equals true, you know, or equals false, where I'm not doing the strict equality because I want them to do the coercion for me. So coercion takes place here in the bang equals or bang double equals. Has anybody seen this and not know what bang equals mean? Right? Bang equals means not equal to. So if these two values are not equal to each other, then return me a true value. Then we have greater than. Again, use that to my advantage, where if I'm checking between a number and a string, I want to get that from it. Shoot. Right? So, and that's the thing that's super weird, because like I'm kind of glad you talked about it, but then had an answer for it, because I'd be like, I don't know. You know, it's like, even though I've read it and I've memorized it, it's like trying to regurgitate like why that's not equal. It's like still blows my mind too. So I'm glad you had an answer for that. You answered your own question. So his question was the triple bang double equals. It's also checking for type as well. So if they're not equal to each other, then that's what makes it a true statement. So just wanted to point out less than and greater than. And then also we have less than, greater than and equal to, or less than and equal to. If you guys check out the Meetup comments, I posted a link to the bit.ly for this, for the slides. Feel free to use this at your leisure if you want to check out more. So going back to my point of taking information from an input field that's meant to be a number. So I'm getting an element called, I should have declared that as a variable, budget. I'm waiting for the user to give me some sort of number, and I'm setting that budget to $1,000. Is that, based on what you've inputted, greater than less than $1,000? The fact that I'm pulling it out of an input field makes it a string. So I'm using coercion here to help me out of this. Another thing I wanted to point out, there is no strict equal to or greater than. There's no strict greater than or less than. So that's another little fun fact of JavaScript. Any questions about coercion and why it's useful? Question? Oh God, that question. Yes, everything gets coerced in there, but we can go down for a while. Huh? So the question was undefined and null are also get coerced? Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, so his statement is like undefined and null are those little special weird cases. If you're equaling something to, checking to see if it's not null or if it's not undefined, then you're gonna run into trouble with coercion. So triple equals comes into play where you want to specifically find something that is undefined or is null to do something with that. So this goes back to my point of understand what coercion is and use it to your advantage. There are times absolutely where we need the triple equals. So the last topic I wanted to talk about today is what everybody's probably using on a daily basis when they pull from an API of some sort, JSON, right?
That's the sponsor.
JSON, that's our sponsor. So JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's a lightweight data interchange format used a lot by APIs to communicate from front end to back end. It's a communication tool. Some of the advantages of it is it's easy to read and write, and it's used practically everywhere. JSON is a subset of JavaScript, so you'll see a lot of similarities to when you're creating a JavaScript object, but there are some rules that only apply to JSON. For example, so JavaScript is a set of key value pairs. Right? We're all aware the left-hand side is the key that we access to, and the right-hand side represents the value. All right, double quotes around everything. It's generally good rule of thumb, even the key and the string values. The data types you can have inside of a JavaScript object are string, number, boolean, array, and object. What makes it different than a JavaScript object is I could have a function as a value of my object. It's what we know as a method, right? There are JSON P that can have functions for callbacks, but not really getting into that right now, the strictest sense, these are the data types you can have on there. The file extension is a .json file. And then when you're trying to send or receive information, it's a good idea to set the MIME type of application/JSON. We separate everything with commas. The one rule about this is if it's the last item in your list of things, no comma dangles. Meaning get rid of that last comma. You don't need it. It will throw an error on you and crash. So here's a JSON object. It has one key of Meetups, and that key is an array of information. Inside of that array, we have two objects with name, organizer, members, is active, and date. So JSON, being it's not really JavaScript, like it's not really a JavaScript object, we have to convert from one to another. When we're getting a JSON object and we want to manipulate it using the dot syntax, or we want to loop through it or anything like that, we got to convert it. Or if we're trying to save it, if we got a JavaScript object we're working on in our code that we want to save to a server, a JSON server, then we need to convert it to a JSON object. The two methods we have at our advantage or at a disposal with that are JSON.parse and JSON.stringify. JSON.parse is what takes the JSON object and makes it a JavaScript object. And JSON.stringify is what takes my JavaScript object and turns it into a JSON object. Any questions? And that's it. So that's all I have for you guys today. These are my 5 language fundamentals that I hope you guys get more out of.
Before you go, thank you. Thank you very much. Do you guys have any questions? Do you have any comments? Something you'd like to know more about other than the great questions we had in the middle of it? Any more questions?
So the question was, what's my favorite way to debug JavaScript? Brute force. I'm old school, so I came from a Flash background where the debugging back in the day wasn't very good, so I had to do a whole bunch of trace statements. So I got really good at reciting the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air in my scripts. So it's like if I try to figure out how my code was being parsed, I'd write console.log or a trace statement, and I'd start, this is the story all about, and then go to another one, how my life got flipped turned upside down, and just see if it matched the way I do things. The Chrome dev tools have gotten ridiculously good. I'm forcing myself to understand what it is and set breakpoints and utilize that plethora of tools that come there. It's old habits died hard though. So, I've been hearing good things about Firefox's Chrome tools, especially when it comes to the CSS grid system. Like they're the only one that's got a legit inspector for it and whatnot. So I use the Chrome tools every once in a while, but normally I'm brute force console log everywhere. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry, what?
The debugger statement, are you familiar?
I didn't hear anything you said.
Are you familiar with the debugger statement?
The debugger statement, yes. That is, so the question is, am I familiar with the debugger statement? It's a powerful tool. So in my code, I can write the word debugger in my Chrome tools, and it will set the breakpoint there for me. So instead of having to go to the script tag and finding where I want to set my breakpoint and physically putting one there, I can add it to my code. So yes, I've been using that, but again, old habits die hard. Shoot.
For a const variable, I think in your first example, you reassigned the array to be an object array. Is that correct? So what counts as mutating a variable as opposed to, I guess, reassigning it? Because then you append it to it as well. So append is
So good question. Const is mutable. So this example, right? So the very fact that I have a declared const meetups on line 2 and then I am using Meetup somewhere else and then equaling it to something is what is not allowed. Like, because it doesn't matter that it's the same data type, that it's still an object, I'm sorry, still an array. What matters is that I've obliterated the array by using the equal sign. But if I wanted to push or pop and delete everything in the array or add a whole bunch of new stuff to the array, I could do that, which is to illustrate the point that const is mutable, I just cannot reassign it. Because even though it's from data type array to data type array, JavaScript sees that as a reassignment, and that's what's not allowed. Does a let keyword allow us to use it in different scopes? As long as that first let isn't in the global scope. So if I have let, in, just like a variable, if I have function A and function B, and I have let A and let B, or let A and let A in those two different functions, yeah, that'll be fine. I do believe it will throw an error if I have let A in the global scope and then try to redeclare let A somewhere else because of that reassignment. So if it's in the global scope where it knows about it, I believe that's a no-no.
They have this new sophisticated microphone for conferences like this that I can throw. This I can throw if you guys are a good catch. So if you have a question, let me know, and I'll throw it. The other one's a little softball. It's a little bit easier.
All right, then. Any other questions? Nope.
I will promise I will not throw the mic. It was just a joke. So please go ahead and ask.
Cool. Stay away
Guys,
from me,
we do this every first Wednesday of the month, if you can turn it off. Thank you guys for coming to this one. You're very welcome to come to every single one. Hope you're, if you haven't signed up to meetup.com/BocaJS, go ahead and do so. We do have a website. We don't do it for much. Our Twitter is BocaRatonJS, because BocaJS is taking somebody else. We're trying to get that. But checking up on the Meetup and checking your emails will let you know what's going on. There was a JS, thank you. So you guys can see on the Meetup. Thank you. Actually, thank you. That's fantastic. I usually put the slides, they beat me to it, even better when the speaker does it, at the end of the conference. Do check out the comments. I usually put whatever kind of either link or slides or GitHub or something that you guys can see what's going on. Of course, Jeremy's GitHub and Twitter accounts are all there as well. Guys, if you guys have anything you'd like to hear about, contact me on the left-hand side. If you want to know anything that, okay. Sure, actually, so this is one of the best ways that I know how to get information about anything JavaScript. We have our own Slack channel, that's why I wasn't mentioning it. But there is the Palm Beach Tech Slack channel, so you go to palmbeachtech.com/slack is how you sign up. .palmbeachtech.org, thank you, /Slack, and it'll drop it down to the bottom. You can go there, and yes, it's all the time questions. Mainly from these guys.
You want to use his BocaJS one?
He will not be on there. But this is a great, I'm on there all the time, so I can. This is one of the best ones in South Florida, so definitely check it out. So if you guys have anything you'd like to hear about, or you'd like to present, on the left-hand side above the sponsors will be a contact for either me or Michael. Click on either one of us, or just simply click on the contacts, or the organizers, and you can get to us and ask us any questions, comment, anything you'd like to see, and we'll see you guys next month. First Tuesday of the month. Bye, guys. Thank you, Jeremy.